My name is Kate Norlock. I'm the interim Dean of Humanities and Social Sciences here at Trent University. The Humanities and Social Sciences includes the Department of Philosophy, which is primarily responsible for this lecture, and it is my honor to be asked to offer the land acknowledgement appropriate to Trent University events, especially when that land acknowledgement is from a newcomer, a new citizen and settler like me. It is okay to keep looking for a seat during a land acknowledgement. Everybody understands. Just do your best, settle in, and listen to this land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of the Michi-Sageg Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. And may we honor those teachings, not just in our words, but in our deeds. And I believe tonight's event is in keeping with those teachings. Let me add my welcome to you all to the second annual Max Eisen Lecture in Holocaust Studies. This is held in honor of Max Eisen and our dear departed Professor Carolyn Kay, the creator of this series and a passionate advocate for Holocaust studies in her time at Trent and in her scholarly activities around the world. I can't forbear from saying that we live in troubling times and the lessons of the Holocaust have never been more important. Tonight's presentation, Flights of Spirit, features Holocaust survivor Elly Gotz, who has just this past month been announced as named to the Order of Canada. Congratulations, Elly Gotz. Just a little about Elly Gotz. He was born in Lithuania in 1928. As many of you know, he's written a book, Flights of Spirit, which was published in 2018. And in it, he offers a powerful memoir of not just his experiences of the destruction of his Jewish community under Nazi occupation and his slave labor in a concentration camp, but also his rebuilding of his life and family and spirit and educational goals after the war. You'll be hearing much more about that tonight. He will be in conversation with historians Doris Bergen and Tomaz Jardim. Tomaz Jardim is an alum of Trent University. He's back. You knew I'd notice. I'm very excited. Power to the Humanities with a BA in History prior to his MA and PhD from the University of Toronto. Tomaz is a historian of modern Europe at Toronto Metropolitan University today. Doris Bergen is the Chancellor Rose and Ray Wolfe Professor of Holocaust Studies at the University of Toronto. She is also a member of the Academic Advisory Committee of the Center for Advanced Holocaust Studies at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. And I hope that museum is still doing well at this moment. Please join me in welcoming our panel.
Good evening. I'm Professor Antonio Cazorla. I teach history, and I teach a course that I inherited from Caroline Kay, Comparative Genocide. And I teach it for two reasons. One is because it was designed by a wonderful person and a wonderful scholar. And the second reason is because it's very necessary. I'm not going to say what I was thinking of saying for two reasons again. One is because my dean stole most of it. And the second one is because I spoke with Elly a couple of hours ago for too short time for my taste, but it was a very long conversation. And it came to me that we are very lucky today, not only because we have a Holocaust survivor and two wonderful scholars, but it's something else, something more vital. I think that it's reasonable to assume that we are entering dark times. Darkness is growing, like in the Lord of the Rings, no, darkness is growing. But when you meet people that make a difference, when you meet a person like Elly, who came out of darkness, and out of darkness, nothing good comes. But what came out was light. And you speak to him, with him, and you see the light. You see that the human spirit can overcome darkness. When Elly was running for his life, there were people in Europe that were fighting for light. I can think of German people, like the White Rose people, very young people of your age, 20, 22 years old, risking their lives to say the truth about what was going on. There were people like Simone Weil, who starved herself to death just to prove what people were suffering in continental Europe. Those are people of light. Elly belongs to that species of person of light. And you are going to have the blessing of having more light for these times, and with the certitude that light will prevail. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Antonio, for those words. And thank you, Kate, for the introductions. And I want to just start by explaining to you why we decided to create this event in the form of a conversation. And it actually completely relates to what you said, Antonio. Maybe some of you are familiar with the political philosopher Hannah Arendt. For Arendt, one of the keys to ethical existence was friendship. People think relationally. They think with friends whom they trust and who challenge them. These two people sitting here with me are friends from 20 years in each case. And all of us have formed connection not only through our mutual interest in the Holocaust, Elly as a survivor, Tomaz and me as scholars, all of us as educators, but we've deepened that understanding through our friendship and through our conversations. So we want to share some of that feeling with you, and hopefully that feeling of friendship, I think a really important part of the light that Antonio was talking about, will come across for you as well. On the subject of friendship, Tomaz and I were also both friends with Carolyn Kay, and Tomaz, of course, also her student. So he's going to start our conversation with some words of tribute to Carolyn.
Yeah, it's so wonderful to be here, and it represents such an incredible full circle to me. As was already mentioned, I was an undergraduate student here. I had the immense privilege of having had Carolyn Kay as an undergraduate teacher. And I can genuinely say, and many of you will probably attest to this, I mean, everybody loved Carolyn Kay. I remember the day she walked onto the stage. It was a team-taught course, and lots of professors had come before her. But when she came on, I thought, wow, that is the most captivating professor I'd ever seen before. And of course, at that time, I had no idea the extent to which she would impact my life. But I do remember watching her sort of strutting back and forth at the Wenjack Theater on stage and thinking, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. And somehow, miraculously, here I am. And of course, more specifically, it was also through Carolyn that I gained my deep interest in Holocaust education. And of course, for Carolyn, as has already been suggested, Holocaust education for her, and of course she was deeply dedicated to it, was rooted in this idea that in being more deeply aware about human suffering, the human capacity for evil, we can nonetheless sort of become more tolerant and respectful and good global citizens. So it's wonderful to be here. It's such an honor to be to share the stage with Elly and with Doris, and to be able to honor Carolyn's legacy in being part of this event. So thank you for that. So I'm going to kick off our conversation with Elly, and it struck me, I was thinking about, geez, I have seen Elly speak to my students at least a dozen times, and I think almost every time you have begun your talk, you begin with your account of an incredibly poignant scene which takes place in a cellar. You're in hiding in a cellar in the Kovno Ghetto. And for the majority of you, I imagine, who have never heard that account, it really speaks not only, I think, to the incredible odds that Elly's family was able to overcome in order to survive, but also to the essentialness of the family bond that was there, to the sense of determination amongst the family, and I also think an unusually clear-eyed sense of what was at stake. So I just wonder maybe if, Elly, you could begin by recreating that scene for us and telling us about that time, and perhaps saying something about why that the retelling of that somehow, perhaps for you, encapsulates something essential or elemental about your Holocaust experience.
Thank you. Hello, my new friends. I'm going to talk today about a particular aspect of the Holocaust for me, because I was there. 6 million Jews were murdered in Europe. I was amongst the very few who survived to be here with you. And I'll tell you what Jardim has just asked me, Tomaz, about a particular event in the Kovno Ghetto, Kaunas Ghetto, Lithuania, where we had already been for 3 years locked up. 30,000 Jews started out, and 3 years later, only 8,000 of us were alive. The rest had been killed. And now the Russian army was coming close. The German army was retreating, 1944. What will happen to us? The last 8,000. We were afraid. And the Nazis announced, we are liquidating the ghetto. Liquidation to us meant one thing, we are going to liquidate us. But they said, we are taking you guys somewhere else to work. We did not believe them. We had a meeting with our family. I was an only child, my parents, but I had a large family, 3 uncles, an aunt. We got together and we said, we don't want to go where they want to take us, because they are going to take us up the hill to the 9th fort, which was close to the ghetto, where 10,000 Jews had been killed in one day in 1941 already. And other people from Holland, from France, it was a killing field, a military compound. And we said, we don't want to go there. We are going to hide. And if they find us, we will commit suicide. We don't want to be shot up on the hill. So we went looking for a hiding place. We lived in a big 2-story house, a wooden house, but my family, my parents and I, we had one small room there, many families. We went into the basement of the house by ourselves with the rest of the family, looking for a hiding place. And we found a passage with doors on both sides. We went, opened the first door. These were storage rooms in the basement, small rooms. We opened the first door, junk furniture, spider webs, mess. We cleaned it all up and we took the furniture to another room opposite. And then we brought in food, water and food to last us for about 2 weeks. Then we dragged a heavy cupboard in front of the door to cover the door. And we crawled through the cupboard. We broke the back into the room. As soon as we got inside, everybody turned, my 3 uncles, my aunt, my parents and I, everybody turned to my mother. Sonia, are you ready? Ready to commit suicide? My mother was a nurse. She worked in the hospital. She was a chief nurse in the surgery department. So she must know how to commit suicide. And my mother replied, yes, I'm ready. She laid out on a tray, very clean with a cloth, syringes filled with a drug. And she explained, this drug, we give it to older people when their heart is beating too slow, to speed it up. but I'm going to give everybody a large dose of this drug. It will make the heart race and stop, create a heart attack. Are you sure it will work? We asked her. I'm sure. I confirmed with the surgeon. My mother is preparing. I'm 16-year-old. I'm sitting there watching her. I've seen her do it before. She takes bits of cotton wool and puts them on each syringe, and she has a bottle of alcohol on the side. I know what she's doing. And suddenly I said, Mother, this is the last injection. We are not afraid of dying of an infection. We are going to die. We are going to die of a heart attack. Yeah, it's okay to laugh. It's very funny because we laughed also. Everybody started to laugh. And my mother said, I've been doing it like that all my life. But she took away the cotton wool. And I'm wondering, what's it like to die of a heart attack? I have no idea. I'm thinking, the brain must go on a bit when the heart stops, doesn't it? Must feel pain. I don't want to see my family die. Besides, I'm going first. Besides, I'm an only child. I always come first. I slide up the bench to sit in front of my mother, and she doesn't say anything, so I'm satisfied, because I was afraid she would have difficulty giving me an injection like that. She used to give me all the injections when I was a child. She didn't allow anybody to touch me. We are sitting. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, day and night looks the same because we have no window. On the fourth morning, 2 soldiers are coming down the stairs. We can hear them. With a butt of a rifle, they are hitting the ground floor. They come down, they walk past our cupboard, they go to the end of the passage, and they start opening doors. My mother picks up a syringe, and I've got my arm out. If they start moving the cupboard, she will inject me. We are sitting very still. The soldiers are coming closer. We can hear them talking. One of them is standing right next to our cupboard. But the other one opens the door opposite where we stuck the furniture. He looks in, he comes back, he says to the other one, let's go, there are no Jews here, just furniture. And they walked out. So my mother put away the syringe. We are sitting again. 2 days or 3 days, I can't remember. One of my uncles speaks up. Listen, he says, it's already a week since the Russians are next to our city. They must have finished already driving out the Germans. How long can they take? Let's get out and have a look. I think we are free already. The Russian army must be here. So we crawl through the cupboard and we go outside. And we find the Nazi guards are still there, but our people are marching to a train. A train? They don't need a train to take us up the hill to kill us. Perhaps they are taking us to work, like they said. We went to the train. What happened in the ghetto in Kaunas is a story of those 3 years that would make a woman like my mother willing to kill her family and herself. That is a story of ghetto Kaunas. Shall I get on a little more? I'll tell you a little about what happened in the ghetto from the first days. The first thing, no, okay.
Can I ask one specific question about the ghetto?
Yeah.
Because I think it's so important about your family and your father and the books. And I thought, would you tell about your father and the books? And also maybe your uncle? These aspects of the ghetto.
An interesting story about the books is, you see, first they started, the Nazis, when they put us in the ghetto, and they demanded that we hand over all our valuables, gold, silver. They came into the room and they took away everything we had. My mother's jewelry, we were not wealthy people, we had very little. My father, with shaking hands, put out his money on his table. Have you got a camera? He brought his camera. Have you got a fur? Furs. My mother brought her only fur. They took it all away. One guy was standing writing down, made a list, asked us for our surname, wrote it on top, Gotz, gave us a copy. They robbed us and they gave us a receipt, you understand? The Germans were very careful, by the way, about documents. They wrote everything down, every killing, every murder, everything they did was documented. And now we have many of the documents. That is what people study. After that came another order. You must give up all your books. Money and gold, we didn't have much, but books, we had a lot of books. My father had loved books. Bruce used to buy a new book every Friday, more than one he couldn't afford. And when we had to move into the ghetto, he brought his whole library into the ghetto in cartons. He wanted his books. My mother wanted to take other things. The books have to come. Now we are living in a very small room, my parents and I. So the books are still in the cartons, lying on the side of the wall. An order: Jews don't need books. Bring all your books to the collection center. Oh, my father was so upset. He got into his books and he pulled out a couple of less important cheap books, put them in a wheelbarrow, and he and I went with the wheelbarrow to deliver the cartons to the collection center. We arrived around noontime. It's a synagogue, an old little synagogue. They ripped out the benches, threw them in the yard, and they told everybody to throw the books on the floor. When we arrived, an amazing sight greeted us. There were books from the floor to halfway up the wall, a mountain of books. The whole synagogue was about a room of like this size. And people are climbing on the mountain and falling and slipping on their books and putting more books. My father looks around. He says, Elly, you notice with the books they trust us. There are no Nazis. Nobody is sitting here watching us. So he can have a look. He loved books. He bends down. He picks up one book. He picks up another book. He puts the book down. That's not valuable. Picks another. Oh, that's good. That's Hertz. What was his name? The German historian.
Von Treitschke?
Who?
Von Treitschke?
No.
Hegel.
No. The German Jewish historian who wrote the history of Jews in 2 volumes. My father found it. He says, that's good, put it in the wheelbarrow. Then he says, you know what? Take out all our old books that we brought here. Leave it here, it's not worth much. Because he picks up, he says, Pushkin, the gold edition. Pushkin is the greatest Russian poet. And he died in 1839. In 1939, they published 7 volumes, beautiful edition. My father says, I always wanted to buy it, but I couldn't afford it. Very expensive. Now it's on the floor. You know what? Put it in the wheelbarrow. After a while, he picked up books in 3 languages, in Yiddish, in German, and in Russian. I spoke all these languages, by the way. My parents spoke to me Yiddish at home, and I went to a Yiddish school. But when they wanted to talk to each other that I shouldn't understand, they spoke Russian, because they were educated in Russian. Russia occupied Lithuania for 150 years before the First World War. My parents both had high school, and my father studied engineering in Russia. They used to talk Russian, so I shouldn't understand. How long do you think it took me to learn Russian? I didn't tell them. I kept quiet. I want to know what they are talking. When I was 10 years old, they discovered the kid speaks Russian. What a miracle. When I went down to play with the kids in the street, I spoke Lithuanian. Anybody here from Lithuanian grandparents? Anybody? A very small country, 2 million people, can't be. Okay. So I spoke Lithuanian, a very difficult language. Comes from Sanskrit, from the Himalayas. The Lithuanian tribes traveled across Siberia, across Russia, and stopped at the Baltic Sea. Lithuanian. I also spoke German, because many Germans ran away from Hitler. He came to power in 1933. By 1939, 1938, there were many German Jews living in Lithuania. I heard German all the time, so I learned German. I knew those languages, but I didn't know the literature of Russia and Germany. Now I picked up the books and we went home. And we went back 7 times. We went back empty and we came back full. My mother is screaming, Julius, what are you doing? You are stealing books. You want them to come and kill us. Don't worry, Sonia, don't worry, he said. We are not keeping them in the house. There's no place. You know, there were books on the bed, on the floor, on the table. You couldn't walk through. He says, Elly, climb up the ladder in the shed. Outside, there was a garden shed. Carry all our books, the new ones, the old ones, carry them all up there. On the ceiling, put them on the ceiling of the shed. If anybody finds them, not ours, we don't know who put them there. That's what I did. I carried all the books up there. I need bookshelves, a pile of books. I took bricks and boards and I make bookshelves. It's very simple. You don't even have to glue it. If you put heavy books on, they stay. I started to read. The Yiddish literature and the Lithuanian literature I knew already at 13 quite well because I was a reader since early, very early. I learned to read. After that, the world was my oyster. I could read anything I want. But the Russian and German literature, I knew the language, but not the literature. I learned the Russian alphabet and I started to read. Pushkin, beautiful poetry. I still remember now, 80 years later, I can tell you some poems in Russian. I read Tolstoy, Anna Karenina, War and Peace. I read Dostoevsky, not suitable for a 13-year-old, I can tell you. I read it. I read Maxim Gorky, I read the moderns, I read the humorists, I read the poets. I read the German literature because I had nothing else to do. There was no school for me. I read Goethe, Schiller, Heine, Thomas Mann. This is just a few. I read novels. I read the German literature. I was now in Germany. I found the Germans don't know their own literature so well anymore. I quoted from Heine. They have never heard of him. I was quite shocked. That was my education. That was where I got my first education, reading.
Maybe I could follow up on that, because having all those books at your fingertips, as you say, was a critical part of your education. But I know the other component of your education occurred in the ghetto also when there was the establishment of the trade school. And I wonder if we could actually bring up that rather remarkable photograph.
Okay, I'll bring it in a moment.
Let's.
I want to first show you what I looked like when I was 13 years old, when the war started.
Right.
And here I am with a uniform. I got my uniform because I finished grade 6 and I was going to high school. So I got a black uniform. I was very proud. Never got to use it. The war started. I will show you the picture just a moment. Here is a picture that you are referring to.
Yeah, so I wondered, this trade school was established in the ghetto, and I wanted to ask you first, what meaning, I think, you derived as a teacher. It seems to me that in such perilous times, this trade school must have been a source of immense meaning and satisfaction for you and the other young boys, essentially, who worked there.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you could say something about what it meant to have that school to go to in the ghetto when you could, do something other than just read those books. And secondly, I wonder if you could say something just about how this remarkable photograph actually came to exist. I mean, I think it's incredibly unusual that someone would have a photograph of themselves that exists from that time in the Holocaust. So
I'll tell you how the ghetto came about in the ghetto school. uh, kids didn't have to go to work, slave labor, from the age up to the age of 15. 15 to 65 had to go to work. I didn't have to go, I was 13. And then the Jews, the management of the ghetto, asked the Germans for permission to establish a trade school. Regular school, no. Jews don't need schools. But a trade school, okay, let them learn. Maybe they'll be useful later. Because we had workshops in the ghetto where we made sewing uniforms and shoes and fixing cars and all kinds of things. So they formed a trade school. The trade school was originally made by teachers who were in ORT, O-R-T, Organization for Rehabilitation Through Training, an old Jewish organization from the years 1890 or something, in Russia established, to teach Jews a trade. And we had a big institute in Lithuania, in Kaunas, in the capital of that school. Now the teachers were only in the ghetto. So they established a school, a metalwork school, which is a picture here, a woodworking school, and for the girls, sewing machines. I joined the metalwork school, nothing else to do, and I don't have to go to work till I'm 15. So at the age of 13, I started to learn metalwork. I learned how a lathe works. I learned how to file metal, to drill it, to measure it very precisely. I learned to measure to a thousandth of an inch. You know the joke about the apprentice who was asked, how many thou are there to an inch? He said, oh, there must be millions. I learned locksmithing. I became a good locksmith. I learned how locks works. I could open a door that they lost the keys without breaking the door. And I loved it. I loved learning the metal. I didn't have to think how I would die because that was a big issue. I was afraid. I used to have dreams that I was shot but not killed, and I was thrown in a trench with dead bodies lying on top of me, and I can't breathe. That used to be my nightmare. But when I was in school, I was happy. I learned for 2 years till I was 15. At 15, I graduated. They offered me a job. I was a good student. You want to be a teacher or you want to go and work downtown with the Jews? No, I want to be a teacher. I became a teacher. And this picture is of me in the center. Make no mistake, that guy with the black hair, that's me. And I'm teaching younger students. And I loved it. I loved teaching them. It was such a pleasure. And that picture is an accident of fate. Somebody, a Jewish guy by the name of Kadishevitz, an engineer, he came in one day, he kept his camera. He opened the jacket, he had a camera, Leica. And I said, oh my God, if they catch him, they will hang him and we will have to go and watch it. That's what happened too. He photographed us and he told us, don't look at me. If they find the picture, I don't want them to know that you knew that I'm photographing you. That's why everybody's looking down. He took the picture, he disappeared. He took thousands of pictures in the ghetto. I have a whole book of his, you probably have seen it, full of books for pictures from the ghetto. He buried them, he developed them. He worked for the Germans in an X-ray department for machines, so he had development equipment. He developed them, the films, and rolled them up back in the can, 35 millimeter, and buried them in the ground. He survived. End of the ghetto, he ran away to a peasant, and he came back as soon as the Russians came in, dug up the case, didn't give it to the Russians because they had no interest in Jewish history, and he sent it away to Israel. From Israel, it got to the Washington Holocaust Museum. And that is where I found that picture. I went with my wife to visit when I was in Canada already. And suddenly I found these pictures. And I jumped up, I said, that's me. It's the It's the only picture I have of myself in the ghetto, in the whole war years. I took it home, I showed it to all my friends. The Star newspaper heard about it. They came to interview me. They took the picture, the whole story. I had a whole page in the Star. 3 weeks later, they called me. Elly, somebody recognized you in the picture. What do you mean? That guy standing on your left hand, he says he knows you. He's alive? He was younger than me. How did he survive? Where is he? I want to talk to him. He's not here. He's in Tel Aviv. So I got on the plane and I flew to Tel Aviv. And here I'm sitting talking to him. And that guy on the left hand sitting next to me, he says, Elly, you taught me so well. I now have a factory. I build machines. I export all over the world. Thank you very much. Pif paf pui bom chik chak. That was my nickname. How did I get the nickname? When we worked with metal, I used to admire my teacher because he managed to hit the chisel with a hammer so precisely, and he didn't look where he's hitting. He was looking below where the work is. A chisel hitting, bam. And I watched him, and I said one day to the student, it looks to me like pif, paf, pui, boom, chick, chak, the echo of the metal. I said it once. It immediately became my nickname. They were not lazy. They repeated it every time, the whole thing. Pif, paf, pui, bom, chick, chak. That's what they called me. When I became a teacher, behind my back. So that guy remembered me. Pif, paf, pui, bom, chick, chak. I said, whom did you bring? I said, you are welcome. I'm happy that you have a factory. Yes, he says, come to my factory. I'll show you. Nice factory. I said, who are the other two guys? They are laughing. We were also your students. So that happened.
Elly, can I follow up on that with another story about a reunion and the unfinished history in the ghetto? One of the things that my students are always so fascinated by is the story of your little cousin, Shulamit, later Dahlia.
Yeah.
How you almost raised her as a child in the ghetto and then lost track of her and then found her again. And I wonder, can you tell about your relationship with that little girl?
That little 2.5-year-old girl was left alone with her mother when 10 people of the family went out to work every day. And she was so lonely, and my aunt said to me, Elly, when you come back from school, play with her. She's so lonely. So I started to take her out and tell her stories. At 2.5, she was speaking fluently Yiddish. She had lots of questions. I used to, why? And I started to feed her. I started to put her to bed and tell her a story. She became my baby. At 15, I had a baby. I told my students, don't do it. One day, my uncle, her father, said, they are going to kill us all. They killed 10,000. I have some of the stories there. They killed 10,000 on the 9th fort. They are going to kill us. I must get my child out of the ghetto. So he writes a letter to his friend, a Catholic journalist in the city. Would you take my child if I can get her out? And an answer comes back from the woman, his wife. She says, there were young people married just before the war. My uncle knew them well. And she writes, I don't know where my husband is. The Russians who occupied Lithuania before the Germans came for a whole year, they arrested him. They took him. He was a Lithuanian nationalist. They took him and they actually killed him in White Russia, in Belarus. She didn't know that. She said, I don't know where he is. I've lost him. But she said, I have no children. I'll take your girl. Where can I meet you? I want to talk to you. He says, I work in a factory downtown. Come in the backyard 12 o'clock, I'll talk to you. And she came. And I want to show you, here's a lady who took that child. Here's my little cousin sitting there. Her name was Shulamet, a Hebrew name, and they named her Dalia, which means in Lithuanian, fate, child of fate. So my uncle meets her, and he talks to her, and he offers her gold coins, which he had. The story of the gold coins I can't tell you. It's a funny story, but how we got it, how we hid it, and how we got it back. And you can read my book. But she refused to take. I'm not taking anything from you. No money, no gold. I have enough. Just a child. They made arrangements. My mother gave the child one morning an injection, fell asleep, put her in a knapsack. Uncle put it on his shoulders, went out to work. They used to go 25 men, and 2 soldiers used to take them to the factory and bring them back at night. They stopped under a bunch of trees for a rest. Uncle put down the knapsack, put it under a tree, and he went off to work. He turned back, he saw a man came and grabbed the bag and disappeared, and we got a message. The goods have arrived. The child was safe. And here's that woman sitting with a child and her mother on the left side of the picture. The 2 women lived in an apartment and they took her in. She spoke Yiddish, they spoke Lithuanian. Must have been quite difficult at first. She was crying, they told us, couldn't understand what they were saying. 6 months later, the kids spoke Lithuanian. This was our mother and this was our grandmother. And that is how my little cousin survived the war. I want you to know that 3 months after we sent her out of the ghetto, one morning, after all the people went out, the adults, to work, trucks came into the ghetto, soldiers went house to house hunting for children. They took away babies from mothers. If the mother didn't give the baby, they used to beat her. Then they said, you can go on the truck with the baby. They went into every house and they pulled out kids up to the age of about 11, put them on the truck. Some parents, mothers, grandmothers, grandfathers went with the children. 3,000 children and a number of adults were killed the same day we found out about it. When the parents came home and found the children were gone, the cries that went up in the ghetto, I will not describe to you.
Elly, I wonder, eventually, I mean, we started with your description of the scene in the cellar, and then once you emerge from the cellar, you wind up, in fact, on that train, which, unbeknownst to you, is in fact bound to Dachau, and ultimately to a life of slave labor. I know, in having heard you speak a number of times, that you're hesitant to attribute your survival to anything beyond what I've heard you refer to as dumb luck. But knowing you the way that I do, I can't help thinking that while dumb luck played an important role, there are scenes which you have described that suggest to me that also your sense of ingenuity and perhaps even the specific technical skills that you gained in the ghetto were also important in how you managed to survive that next chapter when you were in Dachau. And so I wondered if you could talk about your arrival at Dachau and what you did there, and if you do have any reflections on why you feel you ultimately survived when so many others didn't.
Thank you. We got into a train, 200 people jammed into a wagon, a freight wagon, no place to sit. We were lying on top of each other. No water, no food, no facilities, 1 bucket for 200 people. I can't even describe how terrible it was. No air. We traveled. We stopped after overnight at a camp, not a camp, at a station, Stutthof, a concentration camp. We didn't know at the time that name. and everybody out of the train, my mother, all women to the left and men to the right. I lost my mother. She jumped out and she was gone. I went with the men to the left. Half an hour later, back on the train, all the men, the women remained standing there. My aunt and my mother remained in Stutthof. We traveled on and we went to Dachau, and we arrived a day and a half later in a small camp that looked like that. I'm sorry. Here. 2 rows of barbed wire that you see, and those huts half buried in the ground. We didn't know it was our barracks. Immediately, they demanded we hand over all our luggage, whatever we brought with us. They took away our clothes. They put us through a shower, and then they gave us striped uniforms and one blanket. And we stayed in that barrack, and here's the picture of the barrack. 25 men sleeping on each side, one blanket. Sometimes 2 of us shared one blanket below us and one above. We were sleeping on the hard wood. And I stayed there for 10 months. 10 months of total hunger, nothing to eat. When we came back after 12 hours of work, we got a bowl of soup, a liter of soup, vegetable soup, parsnip soup, I don't know, potato, no meat, no fat, and 1 slice of bread, which used to get smaller eventually. That's all for a whole day, working for 12 hours. So you can imagine, we had no washing facilities in the whole camp. We were not expected to live too long. But in the meantime, I haven't a shower for 10 months, I didn't have a shower. We were full of lice, and the lice were crawling in our body by the thousands and eating, drinking our blood and bringing us disease, fleck fever, spotted typhus. That was the work. Now, one night, after 3 months, we lost all our fat. The older people who were sick, who had diabetes, who had a bad heart, they died in the first few days. They couldn't survive. But after 3 months, young people started to die. One day I said goodnight to my friend sleeping next to me, a young boy my age, and the next morning I'm shaking him. Get up. He's dead. He died. It's so unpleasant. I have to carry him out. I've never carried a dead body. I had to carry him out to the Bergen. This is a death wagon that used to come and pick up every day the dead bodies. I asked another guy, help me. So he took the arms and I took the legs, and he carries him out and he flings him on the wagon hard, and his head bounces 3 times on the wood. And I wanted to put him down gently. It is my friend. I got used to it. I carried more dead bodies than I could think, than I could imagine. Now you asked me about how did I survive? I don't know how I survived, but I tried everything I could. I tried to make a knife to cut the bread once, and I used to get the crumbs because I had a knife. I was a mechanic. When I came to Dachau there, they shouted, mechanics, toolmakers. I picked up my hand. They took me to a pump station, and I was in charge of a huge pump, 150 horsepower motor, pumping cement to the building site. And I had a very good, there were 12 such pumps in 3 stations. I was in station number 1. I have the picture of it, but I won't show you here. And I was in charge of that pump. And while the pump worked, I didn't have anything to do. But when the pump broke down, jammed up with stones or something, I had to open the pump, rip it apart, pump it out, change the ring, the rubber ring on the pump, piston, and put it back together. And the German Meister who was in charge of us was a good man, a very quiet guy, and he helped me survive. He brought me extra bread. He brought me potatoes once. He brought One day, something broke down, a very fine machine part. He couldn't fix it. He was a heavy machine mechanic. I said, I know how to fix it. Are you sure? Yes, I know how to fix it. I repaired it. He brought me half a loaf of bread. I showed my uncles and my father. I asked him permission to bring my father into the workshop. He said, bring him in. And that saved my father's life. My father weighed 65 pounds when he was liberated. I weighed 70 pounds after 10 months. But we survived through that. So being a mechanic helped. Being inventive, I did all kinds of crazy things where I risked my life. I once got into a potato field out of the building site. If they caught me, they would have shot me to death. I crossed the railway line where soldiers used to walk. I risked everything to find extra food. Extra food. By the way, what did we, shall I mention the factory? You see, we were brought to a factory. The Germans invented the first jet fighter plane, the Messerschmitt 262. It was a jet aeroplane. The first one could fly 700 kilometers an hour, could shoot down a bomber that was to fly. The British or Americans bombers were flying overhead every day and every night. They could fly up and shoot him down very quickly. But the Germans couldn't build them. The factories were being destroyed. So they decided to build a factory so strong that no bomb of 1,000 kilograms, a ton, could not break through. This is what they did. They piled up sand, covered it with concrete and steel, 5 meters thick. This is about the height of this here, 5 meters. And then they dug out the sand and put in 3 floors of machine tools to produce an aeroplane, mass production. Here's a building site. In the back, you can see 5 meters of metal that we put up, our people. In winter, freezing, wearing just a little jacket, and later they gave us a little coat kind of cloth. People died every day, died on the workplace and died at home. Here's a picture of the 2 people here, a soldier in front and a prisoner. You have never seen a building that size. It was huge. In fact, here's a pump station where I worked. Number 1 pump, the pipes were going with the cement to the building site. And this is what I looked like. Not me, somebody else, after working there. So I did what I could to survive, but many people, everybody tried. Partly it was my skill saved my life, and partly just luck. Just luck. Somebody had to survive. I was it.
Elly, you mentioned this really important point that you were together with your father. And I know many times in your book, you saved your father, and sometimes he saved you with the apples. There's a really important section in the book about the moment of liberation and the discussion with your father. And looking at this image right now of a young man, like you say, this is about how you looked. Your father weighed 65 pounds. Can you tell us a bit about that time of liberation, like those end days in April 1945, and how the war came to an end for you?
First of all, they grabbed us when the American army came close to surround our factory place. They grabbed us on the train and they put us into Central Camp Dachau. And now we are in the granddaddy of all concentration camps, the first one founded in 1933, Dachau, the main camp of Dachau. We were in one part of 11 camps around the building site. Over 10,000 people were working there and dying every day. My father is dying. I can see it in his eyes. He's given up. His eyes are gray. He can't walk. He's finished. And I know if anybody gives up, they die very quickly. So I begged my father, please don't die. I don't know where my mother is, and now you are dying. And my father said to me, I don't know how much longer I will be with you, my son. Sad words. We went into barrack number 2. He wants to lie down. No place. Shelves. 3 shelves covered with people from shoulder to shoulder. They are lying there. No spot because the Dachau was overloaded 4 times because they brought them from other camps to the central camp. They pulled out a dead body from the bottom bunk, and my father grabbed it and jumped in. He had a place. And I thought, I'll find him dead tomorrow morning. He's not going to live the night. I fell on the floor next to him and I fell asleep. I was so tired. In the morning, my dad is still talking to me. He's alive. Noontime, the soup comes. You have to get up and stand in line. He can't get up. He gives me his dish. All we possessed was a dish on a spoon hanging on our jacket, on a string. If you lose your spoon, you can't eat. I go with the 2 dishes and I beg them, please give me one for my father over there. They gave me 2 dishes and 2 slices of bread. I'm walking to my father. He grabs the soup and starts eating. And people are shouting, the Americans are here, we are free. I look out the window, I see a jeep standing there. I said, Father, we made it. They promised they will kill us. They always said, the last bullet we are keeping for you. You are never going to live to be free. But I said, we made it. And my father says, oh, that's good. Have you got a bread? That was my moment of liberation. Have you got a bread? Here's the crowd that came out to greet the Americans, those who could stand on their legs. I was not. I was staying with my father. I was afraid he would die. But about half an hour, I don't know, later, he thought, there is a hope now. So he wants to live again. He got out of the bunk, he stood in front of me and he said, so now what? Now what? We went into a hospital. We stayed for 6 months in hospital. I went from 70 pounds to 120. And when I came out, I was full of hate. I was full of hate. That's an important point of my story. I wanted to kill Germans. I wanted the revenge. One happy thing, I found out after 3 months in hospital that my mother survived. So we brought her to us. I had my mother. She looked so terrible. I could hardly recognize her. She was so thin. My mother was a good-looking woman. But she was my mother and she was alive. I couldn't tell people that I had both parents. I was afraid, not afraid, but uncomfortable because nobody had parents. Everybody was an orphan. And I had 2. My aunt was also survived. And when she got better, she went back to Lithuania secretly and recovered her little girl. And here's my little cousin and me. I'm kissing her and she has no idea who I am and why I'm kissing her. She doesn't know. And she speaks Lithuanian. My cousin. She lives in Norway now, and we are very happy to have her.
Can I ask you a little bit about these wonderful reunions? It is truly remarkable that all of your immediate family survived, especially given the incredibly high mortality rate of Lithuanian Jews in particular. It's remarkable. When these scenes of reunion happened with your mother and others, did you sort of process together and talk through the things that had happened? Did you tend to talk about and tell each other what had happened to you, or was your approach to kind of returning back to normalcy different?
We didn't stop talking about it. We were talking amongst ourselves all the time. Only later, when we got out of the refugee camps and we went into the world, did we stop talking because other people didn't want to listen. Our relatives in South Africa didn't want to hear our stories. So I shut up. But then we were talking all the time. And no, we were talking all the time about it. My father never stopped talking. He always wanted to tell. And people told him, Julius, don't talk about it. It's so hard for you. Don't. What they meant is, it's hard for us to listen. That is why we didn't talk. Here's my mother with me in Norway. That's another story. We stayed in Germany for 2 years, 1945 to 1947. We stayed in a refugee camp. We couldn't go anywhere. We wanted to go to Palestine. The British had Palestine, no Jews are going. No country wanted us. Canada, a director of immigration in Ottawa said, for Jews, none is too many. There's a book by that name, read it, look it up. So we couldn't go anywhere. We stayed in Germany. But I looked for a gun. I was looking for a gun to kill German, any German, for what they've done to us. And I couldn't find a gun. Thank God I didn't. I would have killed somebody. I would have been to jail. After a while, I said to myself, what are you thinking? You can't kill people in peacetime. And you can't hate 60 million Germans, only some of them, and you don't know who. I used to think, I want to kill any German. And I asked myself, would you kill that woman? And I looked and I said, I wouldn't kill her. She has done nothing to me. So whom? That guy, he could have been a guard in Dachau. Forget it, you don't know that. Maybe he was a professor of history. Who hated Hitler. I gave it up. I used to turn my head sideways. Don't think about it. Stop hating. And when I stopped hating, I started living for the first time. I remembered I want to be an engineer, and I haven't got high school. So I hid the books.
Elly, can I say we're getting pretty close to the end, but you have a number of amazing photographs about your time in Rhodesia, in South Africa as a student. And in your book, you actually spend quite a few pages talking about how you rebuilt your life, became an engineer. Can you talk about sort of why those scenes of adventure, the crocodile hunting, the horseback riding, you in your graduation gown, why those aspects are an important part of your Holocaust story?
This is my father in Africa.
Yes.
I studied in Germany. Once I gave up hate, I started studying books to get to high school through mathematics, physics, science. And after I took a course in electronics, I learned how to repair radios, 10 months a course. I love it. Electronics is so fascinating. I wanted to be a mechanical engineer. Now I want to be an electronic engineer. And I did it. First, I applied in Germany, in Munich, to the famous engineering faculty in Munich. 5 professors sat there and examined me for an hour and a half. They accepted me at university. So I come home and I say, Mother, I'm going to university. I'm going to be an engineer. She said, not in Germany. Why not? We are getting out. Where are we going? Nobody country. She said, Norway was the only country said they'll take 500 Jews. We signed up. Our whole family, my 3 uncles, my aunt, my cousin, and us, we went to Norway. And the Norwegians were wonderful for us. They gave us housing, they gave us bed sheets, they gave us everything. I learned Norwegian in 3 months. Because if you know 4 languages, the 5th one is easy. I learned it very quickly. I was in a hurry. I want to get matric. I want to get matric in Norway. I want to go to university. My father writes to his uncle in Africa, send some money. My son wants to be an engineer. He shouldn't have to work, because I got a job immediately. I was the first one to get a job in Oslo, in capital. It's such a beautiful country, Norway. You can't believe. And my uncle says, I can't send money, not allowed. Come to Africa. I'll make sure your son can go to university. So because of me, my parents went up, left the family in Norway. My cousin still lives in Norway. And we went to Africa, not South Africa. They wouldn't take Jews or Catholics. We were in very good company. We went to Rhodesia, Zimbabwe now. But at the time it was a British colony. Now I have to learn English. I've just learned Norwegian, the sixth language. I learned English. I went to school, high school, for 10 months, and 9 months, and I passed my matric. I went to South Africa, and I became an engineer in Johannesburg. We didn't have, in Rhodesia, we didn't have a university. And I loved it. I loved the studies, and I came out. I was so happy. And I established, because I couldn't get a job in Rhodesia, they didn't need engineers, electronic engineers. There was no industry. So what should I do? Have to start a business. I opened a little shop. I had no money. Radio repairs. I didn't have to be an engineer to fix radios. I learned it from... I made some money. I made a big store, put in my parents to sell. I don't like retail. It's very boring. So you have to wait for somebody to do you a favor to buy something. I can't stand it. So I started a sound recording studio, doing that kind of work. I started to make records, vinyl records. Then I started another 2 businesses. I haven't got time to tell you. I became a film director. I started to make films for the Africans, and I had a wonderful time. I was fishing on the Zambezi River. There I caught a tiger fish with a chunk of meat of a crocodile. Where do you get crocodile meat? You shoot a crocodile, that's where. I became a crocodile hunter. I loved it. We sold the skin for a lot of money. And I was running 4 businesses at the same time. And I learned how to ride horses. I tell all this to the students because I want to show them that you can start life in a very bad position and you can still make a good life for yourself. I give students hope. That's why I talk about it. And one day I thought to myself, I have to find a woman I could love all my life. I mean, I have to get married. I had a lot of friends, but I needed somebody special. And I found her, my Esme. We have now been married for 67 years and we are still in love. I'll tell you, that really requires applause because not many people do that. We had a wonderful life. We had 3 children in South Africa. We had a big factory, electronic welding of plastics. We were successful. I begged the whole family, my wife's and mine, let's get out of here. South Africa is a terrible country, beautiful country, but terrible. The political situation at the time with apartheid, we got out and we came to Canada. And in Canada, we established a factory, electronic welding of plastics. 7 years later, I've got money. I bought an airplane. This is my airplane. I became a pilot. My dream from the age of 13 to be a pilot. I learned how to fly an airplane. And now we are old people. Here is my 90th birthday and 60th wedding anniversary. We danced, ballroom dancing. I love it with my wife. But the year before was Canada's 150th birthday, you may remember. May I show that?
How was it?
That was fantastic. I'll tell you, jumping out from the airplane the first time, that's a strange, a scary moment. For 1 second, that is really, whoop. And the air is cold and it hits you. Fantastic. Yeah, I jumped. Once. I want to tell you, it's a bit of an exaggerated pleasure. And now we are old people, we are sitting having a drink, and I want to tell you a story that comes from the First Nations. This is an elder of the First Nations talking to his grandson, and he tells him, each one of us has in his chest 2 wolves, and the wolves are the one of love and friendship, and the other one hatred and bitterness. And the grandson, and they are fighting all the time. So the grandson says, which wolf will win? The one you feed, he said, the one we feed. So I say to you, my friends, don't feed the bad wolf. Thank you very much. I want to ask some questions now. Doris, you wrote a book. I've read it. You have studied several books, in fact, about religion under Nazi Germany. Could you tell us what you have learned?
I will say one thing, I wrote the book about military chaplains, and I really saw that religion, in this case Christianity, was an essential part of Nazi violence. And I came up with a concept, I call it genocidal culture, how cultures that are engaged in committing genocide literally mobilize every aspect of the culture, the education, the religion, the government, both in the process of destruction, but also to rationalize it and to hide the harm done from the practitioners. So this is what I guess I learned.
You know, I used to worry, not worry, but think about, but particularly in Dachau, where is religion? Where are the Germans who are religious, who have learned about the killing, the death of Christ, who have learned about kindness? Where is it? I never saw a sign of it. And you have proved in your book, I think, that there was very little of it. Now, Tomaz, you wrote a book also, many books about the court cases in Germany. Very interesting. He wrote about the Dachau court cases. I read it with fascination. But the last book is about the bitch of Buchenwald, the woman that the world has picked out as an example of evil. What did you learn from it?
That's a big question. My book looks at her 3 trials. She was put on trial 3 times by the SS, interestingly enough, then by the US Army, and then by the West German judiciary. And you're absolutely right. She becomes this lightning rod for the condemnation of Nazi crimes, and ironically becomes, she in fact serves a longer prison sentence than any other Nazi perpetrator, save for Hitler's deputy Rudolf Hess, and yet she had no official position in the Nazi hierarchy. She was acquitted of the most serious crimes attributed to her. And so my book explores or seeks to answer and account for that. And so the argument I make in my book is very much about how gendered perceptions of violence and culpability inform how we viewed historical crimes, and the courts viewed those crimes at the time, giving her a life sentence while they were slapping on the wrists.
Thousands of people did terrible things, and they picked one woman as a model for hatred, for what she did. And maybe she was not even half as guilty as 3 trials has proved. 3 times they put her to court, each time on different because
that's right. She was deeply morally complicit, I would say, but her criminal guilt was much less than had initially been suspected.
I was shocked when I read your book, because I regarded her as an eminent evil. But she was not. Okay, let's get a few questions in.
Now you know why I spoke about light, no? Okay, yes.
Thank you. Is this working? Okay, perfect. I just had a quick question. I saw on your slides with your photos earlier, there was a photo you flicked past of a young woman holding a rifle, and a caption mentioned something about partisans. I wondered if you wanted to speak on that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, we can go back to that. It takes a moment.
Here, let me find it while you talk.
But the story is, she was a friend of mine. She was 18-year-old, finished high school, and the war started. And she found a rifle, and she went to fight. She went to fight with the partisans. Very brave woman. Here she is. Here she is. Sarah United. She survived. They used to blow up trains at night, destroy the train that was taking things to the front. They were so brave, many of them were killed. She survived. After the war, she became a professor of economics. She came to Canada with her 2 children, and she used to come and talk to you. And she was a professor of economics at York University. A very brave woman. She died at 96, a good friend of mine.
And if you Google her name, Elly's name, and my name, you may find the obituary tribute that we wrote for her.
Yeah, she was a brave woman, brave woman.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, let him choose.
So, when you were working on the planes you talked about while you're being captured, do you remember much of that?
I'm sorry?
Do you remember much about when you were working on the planes?
On the airplanes.
Yeah.
The
You
lessons
mean in-
You mean the factory?
Yeah, oh yes. I was a machine mechanic at a pump that was pumping cement through pipes to the building site. And some of our people drowned in the cement because they were supposed to move around the pipe that was hanging from a crane. And the wind blew the pipe off the board, and they used to fall in and drown in the cement. One day I came home, I said, "Where's my friend?" They said, "He fell in, he's in the concrete." And the concrete hardened and locked up his body for eternity. I go back to Dachau every 5 years. I haven't been the last time, I couldn't go. And I visited that place that we built. We never finished it. We never built an airplane. I didn't contribute to German army. But when I go back there, I ask to visit that building. And I asked the man who took me around, a German officer, it's a military place, took me around. I said, "I want to touch the wall. Take me to the wall." He said, "Why do you want to touch the wall?" I said, "Because my friend is buried in the concrete." So he took me there and I touched the wall. Next 5 years I came. Anybody want to see the wall? He takes people to the wall and I see lights and sculpture on the wall, hands of concrete sticking out and flowers, they are holding flowers. He built it to remember the people. There are 12 people who died in the concrete. So now it's a memorial inside that building.
I was wondering, I know that you flicked through the slides. If you could tell us a little bit about the German gentleman who was found in Toronto, who had been in charge of the killings when you were in Lithuania in the ghetto.
Yeah. It is Zundel. Zundel is the guy.
Rauka. I think she's
you are
talking
talking
about
about Rauka.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Rauka was a man who lived, who was an SS, and he announced on the 27th of October 1941, everybody in the ghetto have to come out in a big open field. We don't know why. And he came out and he sorted us. He said, "This family go to the left, go back to the ghetto. This family go to the right, stand over there." And at the end of the day, out of 30,000 people, 20,000 are back in the ghetto, including my family, most of us, except one branch of the family, and 10,000 are standing on the other side under guard, soldiers. What's going on? Next morning, those 10,000 were marched up the hill to the 9th fort, and there they were murdered in one day. Men, women, and children killed in one day. And it's interesting, but I have here a report about all the killings of the Jews of Lithuania. Only 3% of Lithuanian Jews survived, the lowest in Europe. And I'm one of the 3%. And this report is a Jaeger report. It says Geheime Rechte, secret document. And it describes the killing of the Jews of Lithuania. Multi-page document, and every line has a date, a name of a town, and how many Jewish men, women, and children were murdered in that town. And altogether it is something, here's a picture here, 137,000 Jews out of 200,000 were killed. This report is called the Jaeger report. Karl Jaeger, when he found out after the war that we have this document, he committed suicide because he knew he's going to jail for life. The documents are there. Don't believe Holocaust deniers. People who come now and tell you that it didn't happen, that it's not true, that it's a lie. And when I came to Toronto, 1980s, we came in 1964, but 1980, there was a guy here, Zundel, who wrote a book, Did 6 million really die? When we heard that, the survivors, we said we have to go to schools and talk. And that's when I started to talk. And I haven't stopped.
Thank you very much, Elly, for sharing your story. This is such a precious gift. I have a question. You describe your mental state after the war as being full of hate, but you found a way to live a life full of love. What or who helped you to stop feeling the hate and find more love in your life?
That's a very interesting question. The Americans came in. I was in the American zone of Germany. They gave us housing, they gave us food, they gave us clothing, even though they sent us American second-hand clothes without buttons. But we had a problem finding buttons. But nobody asked us how we feel. Nobody helped us. No psychologists came. I'm surprised that they didn't do that, but they didn't understand even where we come from. I'm afraid I did it by myself. To hate is like taking poison and hoping that the other would die. You know who said that? Buddha, they say, said it 2,700 years ago, and he was right. But the other won't die. We are poisoned when we hate. Hate is the bane of mankind. We are brilliant people. We make telephones. That's such a brilliant thing. As an engineer, I appreciate it more than anything else. But we hate, and we can't live with each other because anybody who looks different to ourselves, we are not comfortable with. A different color of skin, a different nation, a different origin, different cooking style, different. And I tell my students every day, don't hate people you don't know. Find out who they are. You'll discover a common humanity. Canada takes in a lot of people from all over the world, and some of them bring the hate with them, unfortunately. That's a fact. But we've got to try and integrate them and make them Canadian citizens. And that is why I come to speak, really. The real reason I speak to schools, to learn to avoid hate. And I know that some students take it to heart, because when I come to a university to speak, there are always a couple of students who come and say, Mr. Gotz, I heard you in grade 10, and I don't feed the bad wolf.
Any more questions? Yes, over there.
Oh, can you wait for the mic?
Just wait for the mic. We're so sophisticated here.
I have hearing aids, so without a mic, I'm lost.
Okay. Hi, Mr. Goetz. This is the third time I've seen you. You've come to my mom's high school and my high school and now my university, so it's lovely to see you again. I just wondered if you're comfortable talking about it, if you see any parallels between the current US climate and Hitler's taking of Germany.
I'm sorry, could you?
She's saying if you're comfortable discussing it, if you see any parallel between American actions at the moment and German expansionism, essentially.
No. The short answer is no, because things are so different. And to compare present American, even though in some cases very reprehensible actions, it is nowhere near what the Nazis were able to do. Don't compare it. It's a different pain in the neck, but it's different. It's different. The Nazi regime was amazingly hateful, particularly the young people. Young people were more vulnerable to the Nazi regime than anybody else. I'll tell you very quickly. I met one German who asked me for forgiveness because he was a Nazi. I met him through business. I came from Canada. I wanted to buy I was buying some material from the factory where he was vice president. And when I came, they said, we have a translator for you. I said, I don't need you, I speak German. Okay. I came there and they asked me, where did you learn German so well? I said, in Dachau. It's not true, but to give them a dig, you know. So after spending a day talking to the engineers and the salespeople, I made a deal, gave them a lot of money. That guy comes up to me and he says, Mr. Gotz, are you a Jew? Yes. And you were in Dachau? Yes. Come, I want to talk to you. So I figured he wants to tell me he was a Nazi. Sure enough, as soon as we sit down at coffee, he says, I became a Nazi when I was 18-years old. What am I going to say? I've just done business with him. So I said, I suppose you had to. I didn't have to. I wanted to. Okay. But he says, my father, who was a diplomat in the old regime, the Weimar regime, before Hitler, said to me, don't go with these people. They are bad people. And I was furious, he says. I walked away. And about a week later, he says it again. I said, Father, if you say it a third time, I am going to the Gestapo. I was prepared to send my father to Dachau. He said it with a kind of amazement. Now that amazed me too. Okay, you don't agree with your father politically, but you don't send him to die. I said, was he a bad father? He was a wonderful father. So how come? That's what I want you to understand, he says. When I heard that man speak, who is that man? Hitler. When I heard that man speak, cold used to run down my spine. I was prepared to do anything for him. Anything. Were you, in my head, were you SS? I'm out of here. I said, did you do anything? No, he says, I didn't do the Schweinerei, the pig work. I was a soldier in Stalingrad. I lost part of my leg. I nearly died. Tell me, I said, how come Germans in those days, I could say it to him, it was a long time ago, how come Germans say they didn't know that all this was done in their name? He says, don't you understand? Because we are ashamed. I have seen what they have done. They took a bunch of Ukrainian peasants, stuck them in a wooden church, poured gasoline on them and burned them to death. But he says, we are ashamed. And then he said something very funny. He said, we have committed a sin that will not be forgiven for 1,000 years. And I smiled because Hitler used to say, I'm building a state that will last for 1,000 years. And now this guy says, we will not be forgiven for 1,000 years. That man I could forgive. Forgiveness is an interesting question, by the way. You know, in the Christian religion, you have a prayer, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive them our trespasses against us. We are asking God to forgive what we have done to somebody else, but that somebody else is still suffering. In Jewish religion, God will not forgive you for what you have done until that person that suffered forgives you. So in Jewish law, you have to go to the man and ask him even 3 times to be forgiven. Now that's an interesting story, because sometimes you don't want to forgive. A rabbi once offended a butcher in his community, so he was very sorry about it. And Yom Kippur, the time of year when we are judged for what we have done, he goes to the butcher and he begs him to forgive him. He says, I didn't mean to say what I said, I'm sorry. And the butcher, chopping meat, says, I'm not forgiving you. So he begged him a second time, please think about it. My soul is on the chop, chop. I'm not forgiving you, go away. 3 times. He went away. The butcher hit a bone, and the piece of bone hit him in the eye and killed him. The lesson is, after 3 times you must forgive, or else you are guilty. By the way, the Muslims also have a similar rule. You have to ask forgiveness, not from God, but from the person you have hurt.
Hi, thank you so much for coming today. I've never heard you speak, but I am a former undergraduate and graduate student of Dr. Carolyn Kay. And 2 of the things that she impressed upon us was the level of culpability of some of the Germans could vary quite a bit. So when I was studying at the graduate level, one of the things I explored was the culpability of German women. And one thing that really struck me is when you were speaking about that guard that would give you extra bread, right? And you called him a good man. And that really stuck with me because, you talked about your inability at first to see past the darkness. And then here you are sitting here speaking about the goodness of a man who held your fate in his hands. And so that's one thing that I'd love you to maybe elaborate on a little bit more. And then the second thing,
Just one moment.
Yeah.
I just want to tell you,
Mhm.
you are not correct when you call him a guard. He was not a guard. He was a civilian mechanic who was in charge of the machine.
Okay.
He was not a guard.
Okay. Good. And then the second thing was when you spoke about your friend who was the partisan. Um, when you spoke about that, it reminded me a lot of in our studies when we would learn about resistance movements. My daughter is giving a speech in a few weeks on the White Rose, and I was wondering if you could speak to any resistance movements within the ghetto that you maybe came across or witnessed yourself, or not necessarily in the ghetto, but any other stories that would speak to that, because I find them very fascinating.
Your daughter is talking about the White Rose in Germany.
Yeah.
Her daughter is working.
Yeah, my daughter here, she's giving a speech in a few weeks on the White Rose. Yeah.
Yeah, the White Rose, that was a very brave group of young students who were killed by the Germans. They were.
Can I answer about the resistance in the ghetto?
Yeah.
I think it's super important because Sarah Genaita, so she was a partisan, she was decorated by the Soviet Union, she was a hero. Her sister, Alice, stayed in the ghetto with their mother. The mother eventually died, and there was some resentment between those sisters for many years. And one of Sarah's most proud moments was she got her sister recognized as a hero in Lithuania because she organized the smuggling of children out of the ghetto. So children like Elly's cousin, Dahlia, that was organized by your family. But Sarah's sister, Alice, she smuggled out a number of children, including Sarah's niece, now her daughter. So these kind of acts in the ghetto, Sarah said she literally had medals from the Soviet Union. She was the hero who fought in the partisans. And she said, it took me many years to realize that my sister was the true hero. She stayed with our mother. She was there when our mother died. So it's quite fascinating, the different faces of resistance.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
maybe one question more, because our guests have to go back to Toronto.
Oh, wow, a lot of
There is a lady there who is very, very excited, so maybe she deserves the last question.
Thank you so much for having all of us here. And I too am one of the alumni of Dr. Carolyn Kay when she first started Trent here. And also a big shout out, like I could feel like, you know, all her goodness in here. Dr. Tomaz, I was actually at Carolyn's funeral and you spoke so beautifully. She would have been so proud. And everyone here, the legacy of education, of tolerance, of friendship, survive. So thank you so much for that here. I'm a kindergarten to grade 8 teacher in a Scarborough school here, like a little small school. And your messages of reading, of ingenuity, of like hate. I look at my young kids here and like there's a lot of hurt and misunderstanding, like lots of like different things happening. And I would love for all your wonderful messages that you tell at an older group to transfer and trickle down to my little kids and their hands and their brain here. So I, like in the spirit of ingenuity here, I actually had like I think the butterfly is a very symbolic. So if it can come down here, like I actually had like a butterfly painted for you here. And I also have like a special bag, and I'm so happy that you mentioned like First Nations and Inuit and Métis, because like my little bag that I have is actually the a bag that is handmade for Indigenous culture. Thank you so much for
Thank you so much.
And here's a bag handmade for you here.
Thank you.
Dr. Tomaz, I actually have one that's striped, so in like a positive piece here. It's like here, it's a book bag. Thank you. And for you, Dr. Doris, one for you too. And I think I see Tom there. I have a special little rock for you too. Tom, right there. And I had no paper on me. I can't believe this. I had no paper. So I actually had an extra paper cup. So I'm hearing your story. I actually like wrote my little gratitude message and my school and an invitation to come to my school in Scarborough if you ever get a chance. So thank you so much for everything. Thank you.
My friends, I want to finish by saying teachers are the most important people in society because they are bringing up our next generation. And most teachers are working in a way that we can't even understand how hard they work to bring up good citizens. And I'm always very respectful and grateful to teachers. Thank you very much, teachers.
Well, thank you to you for coming, particularly students. This is why we did it here this year, because I think it's very important that young people hear these things. And thank you, Doris. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Elly, for the light.
Thank you.